to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome, and thank you for joining Deep Sleep Stories. Settle in now, as if you are being placed gently into comfort itself, and allow your whole body to become heavy and safe. Tonight, you will drift into a tale about a hidden dock where quiet wishes arrive like lanterns on calm water, and where a small boat carries peace from shore to shore. Let your eyes soften behind their lids. Let your jaw loosen, your tongue resting easily. Feel the place where your body meets the bed, and notice how the bed holds you without effort. Take a slow breath in, as though you are sipping warm air, and let it out as though you are setting down something you no longer need to carry. Breathe again, and imagine the exhale smoothing the space around your heart. With each breath, the day becomes a little farther away, like footsteps fading down a hallway. If thoughts appear, you do not have to chase them. You can let them float past like small leaves on a quiet stream. Now picture yourself standing at the edge of evening. The air is mild and sweet, the kind that feels like clean linen. Somewhere nearby, water makes its softest sound, and far off a bell might be chiming, or it might simply be your imagination settling into a gentler rhythm. Stay with that softness. Let the shoulders drop. Let the forehead unfurl. You are safe to rest, and the story will carry you. And as you breathe, the scene begins to shift, quietly, as though a curtain is being drawn aside by a kindly hand. In a town that most maps forgot to mention, there was a bay shaped like a crescent moon. The townspeople called it Lullwater Bay because the water there did not crash or shout. It only sighed and shimmered, and on still nights it looked like a dark mirror holding a handful of stars. At the far end of the bay, beyond the last lamp-lit street and the last sleepy garden gate, a narrow path wandered through tall grasses. The path did not hurry. It curved around smooth stones and driftwood, and it passed a cluster of old pines that leaned together as if whispering about the weather. Following that path was a person named Elowin. Elowin lived in a small cottage with a slate roof that always looked damp, even on sunny days, as though it had learned to keep a little rain for later. Inside, there were shelves of jars filled with sea glass and dried herbs, ribbons and bits of twine. There were also books with thick spines and soft pages that smelled faintly of salt and ink. Elowin's work was gentle, and her hours were unhurried. She mended nets for fishers who did not mind waiting, and she tied up bundles of lavender for neighbors who liked to tuck calming scents into their pillowcases. Sometimes she repaired wind chimes, replacing a cracked shell or a missing bead, so that the music of porches could continue to tinkle in the twilight. But Elowen held another kind of task, one that she did not advertise and that very few people spoke of aloud. She was a keeper of small, quiet wishes. Not the kind of wish that demanded, not the kind that stamped its foot and insisted on being granted right away. The wishes Elowen tended were the ones people hardly admitted they had. Simple wishes, tender wishes, wishes that asked for peace, for ease, for a soft place to land. These wishes did not arrive in letters. They arrived on the water. On certain evenings when the sky turned the color of a bruised plum and the air felt hushed, small paper lanterns would drift into the bay. Each lantern carried a tiny folded slip of parchment inside, sealed with a bead of wax that shimmered like moonlight. No one quite knew where the lanterns came from. Some said they were sent by the bay itself, the way a tide sends gifts to shore. Others said they were released upstream, where a river braided through distant hills and forests, gathering the hopes of travelers and carrying them toward the sea. A few believed the lanterns rose from dreams, when sleeping minds were kind enough to let a wish float free. Elowen did not argue with any of these explanations. She simply listened for the moment when the lanterns arrived. Tonight was one of those nights. The path through the grasses ended at an old dock, long and low, built from weathered boards that had been smoothed by countless souls and by years of mist. The dock reached into the bay like a careful thought, stopping just where the water deepened and turned ink dark. At its end, a single lantern hung from a crooked post, its flame steady and gold. People called this place the Dock of Quiet Wishes. In daylight, it looked ordinary enough, though charming in a worn sort of way. The boards were gray and silvery, the nails dark with age. A few ropes were coiled neatly around posts, and a small rowboat bobbed nearby, tied with a knot that looked lovingly practiced. But at night, especially on nights like this, the dock became something else. A hush seemed to gather there, as though the air itself had decided to speak more softly. The water near the dock took on a faint sheen, a floating glow that moved as the bay breathed in and out. And sometimes, if one stood very still, one could hear a sound like distant singing. Not quite words, not quite melody, more like the memory of lullabies. Elowen stepped onto the dock with the careful ease of someone who knew it well. The boards gave a sleepy creak, as if greeting her in their wooden language. She carried a small basket on her arm, lined with cloth. Inside were a pencil, a spool of thread, a tiny bottle of oil for the lantern flame, and a pouch of smooth stones that felt cool and steady to the touch. She paused at the midpoint of the dock and looked out over the water. The bay was calm, but not empty. In the distance, faint points of warm light drifted, like fireflies that had learned to float. Lanterns were arriving. Elowen drew a slow breath and let it ease through her body. Then she walked to the end of the dock and knelt, reaching down to skim her fingers across the surface of the water. It was cool, and it carried the softness of night. When she lifted her hand, droplets fell back like beads of glass, making tiny circles that widened and widened until they disappeared. The rowboat nudged the dock, impatient in the mildest way, as if it wanted to be useful. Elowen smiled, untied the rope, and stepped into the boat. It settled under her weight with a gentle rock, then stilled as though it had found its balance. She took the oars and pushed away from the dock. The boat moved soundlessly across the bay, as if the water was glad to make room for it. Elowen rowed slowly, not because she was tired, but because the night seemed to prefer slow motion. Each stroke was even, unhurried. Each movement created a faint ripple that glided outward like satin being unrolled. Lanterns drifted toward her. The first lantern she reached was made of thin paper the color of cream, with tiny pressed petals embedded in it. It glowed warmly from the candle inside. Elowen steadied it with one hand, careful not to crush it, and with the other hand, she opened the little hatch at the base to retrieve the parchment. She held the parchment close to the lantern's light and read without moving her lips. The wish was simple. A wish to forgive oneself for being tired. Elowen's expression softened. She'd seen wishes like this before, quiet as snow. She opened her basket and took out a small, smooth stone, the kind that fit easily in a palm. With her pencil, she wrote a single word on it, one that would not ask too much of the wisher, one that would only offer a gentle direction. Then she tied the stone to the lantern's little string with a loop of thread. When she let the lantern go again, it drifted onward, now carrying its wish and its stone, its reminder and its comfort. The lantern's path was not random. Lanterns with quiet wishes rarely wandered aimlessly. They seemed to know where to go, as if the bay held invisible currents made of kindness. Elowen continued. She gathered another lantern, this one pale blue, with a faint pattern that looked like waves. Its wish was a hope for a peaceful homecoming, for the feeling of being welcomed by one's own life. Another lantern carried a wish to sleep without worry. Another wished for courage to speak gently. Another wished for a friendship to feel easy again, like it had once felt when laughter came without effort. Elowen did not judge the wishes. She did not rank them. She treated each one as if it were precious, because it was. Each was a small piece of someone's inner world, set afloat on the water, asking the night to hold it. As she worked, the bay seemed to respond. The surface glimmered more clearly, reflecting the lanterns as a constellation of warm floating stars. The air around her took on a faint scent of salt and something sweeter, like chamomile steeping. Sometimes Elowen would pause and simply listen. She could hear the tiniest creak of the oars, the quiet lap of water against the boat. Above, the sky was deep and wide, filled with stars that looked pinned into velvet, and under it all was a feeling, subtle but present, that the world was not in a rush. After she had tended many lanterns, Elowen noticed something different. Farther out, nearer the center of the bay, a light floated that was not shaped like the others. It was larger, rounder, and it shimmered with a softer glow. Less candle flame, more moonbeam. It drifted slowly, as though unsure of itself. Elowen guided the boat toward it. As she approached, she saw that it was not a paper lantern at all. It was a small glass orb, sealed and buoyant, with a gentle radiance inside it. The light did not flicker. It simply breathed, brightening and dimming like a sleeping chest. Elowen reached out and lifted the orb carefully. It was cool against her fingers, and its weight was reassuring, like a well-made bowl. Around its neck was a ribbon, faded but clean, and tucked beneath the ribbon was a folded note, smaller than any she had seen before. Elowen opened the note and brought it close to the orb's light. The wish inside was written in careful, steady handwriting. It was a wish to feel safe in the quiet. Elowen read it once, then again, letting it settle into her mind, as gently as snow settling on a branch. Some people, she knew, found the quiet too wide. Silence could feel like a room with too much space. In quiet, thoughts could echo. In stillness, the heart could beat a little louder. This wish did not ask for noise. It did not ask for distraction. It asked for peace inside the hush itself. Elowen's hands rested on the orb. The boat rocked slightly, and she steadied her breathing, letting it become slow and even, as though she could offer her steadiness through the air. Then she did something she rarely did. Instead of adding a stone, instead of tying a word to the orb, Elowen held the wish close and began to hum. Her hum was low and soft, almost indistinguishable from the sound of water. It was not a song with a beginning and end. It was a simple thread of sound, a warm line that could wrap around the wish and hold it. The orb's light brightened a little, as if it recognized the offering. Elowen continued humming as she rowed back toward the dock of quiet wishes. The bay seemed apart for her, the lanterns drifting aside as if making a path. When she reached the dock, she tied the boat and stepped back onto the boards. The lantern at the end of the dock glowed warmly, and its flame did not tremble at all, as though even the fire understood it was time to be calm. Elowen carried the glass orb to a small wooden box that sat near the lantern post. The box had a lid that fit snugly, and inside it was lined with soft cloth, like a nest. Several other objects rested there. A few shells with pearly interiors, a carved piece of driftwood shaped like a crescent, and a smooth, dark feather that looked almost blue in the lamplight. These were not trophies. They were anchors, items that held gentle meaning. Elowen called them comfort keepers. She placed the orb among them. For a moment she stood very still. The air around the dock felt slightly warmer, as though gratitude itself had a temperature. She could hear the grasses whispering behind her. She could hear the bay breathing beneath her. Then from the shore, a faint sound carried across the night. Footsteps, slow, hesitant, footsteps coming along the path through the tall grasses. Aloan did not startle. She did not tense. She simply turned, her posture easy, her hands resting at her sides. A figure emerged from the dimness, stepping into the circle of lantern light at the dock's entrance. It was a traveler, someone the town did not recognize. The traveler wore a cloak the color of moss and carried a small pack. Their hair was damp with mist, and their eyes held the tiredness of someone who had been walking for a long time. Not in a frantic way, but in the way of someone who had not yet found a place to pause. The traveler stopped a few steps from the dock, as if unsure whether to come closer. Aloan offered a small smile. It was the kind of smile that did not demand anything in return. "You found it," she said quietly, her voice as soft as the bay. The traveler nodded, swallowing, as if words felt heavy. "I didn't mean to," they whispered. "I was just following the sound." Aloan listened, the way the dock listened, the way the night listened. "The bay can be kind," she said. "It guides people when they need guiding." The traveler stepped closer, the boards creaking gently under their boots. They looked out over the water, where lanterns still drifted in the distance. "It's beautiful," they said. "It feels like the world is holding its breath." Aloan followed their gaze. "Not holding its breath," she murmured. "Just breathing slowly." The traveler's shoulders eased, as if they had been bracing against something for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to let go. Aloan did not ask where they had come from. She did not ask what they carried in their heart. She simply waited, patient as moonlight. After a quiet moment, the traveler spoke again. "I heard stories," they admitted, "about a dock where wishes come to rest. I thought it was only a tale for children, the kind you tell to make them feel less afraid of the dark." Aloan's eyes warmed. "Some tales are true," she said. "Not because they are loud, but because they are gentle." The traveler looked down at their hands, then back up. Do you take wishes?" Aloan nodded slowly. "If they come," she said. "If they are ready to be carried." The traveler's breathing turned uneven for a moment, like a small wave catching on rocks. Then they inhaled, longer this time, and their voice came out softer. "I think I have one," they said, "but it's small." Aloan's smile deepened. "Small wishes are welcome here." The traveler stepped to the edge of the dock and gazed at the water. Their eyes looked like they were seeing something far away, something that lived behind their ribs. Then very carefully, they took something from their pocket. It was not a note, not a lantern. It was a tiny folded square of cloth, stitched with a simple pattern, 2 waves and a star. The cloth looked well loved, its edges softened by use. "I've carried this," the traveler said, voice barely above the water's hush. It belonged to someone who knew how to rest, someone who could fall asleep like a leaf settling. I've tried to remember that feeling, but sometimes when it gets quiet, I don't know what to do with myself. Aloan's gaze softened with understanding. The traveler held the cloth square between their fingers, as though it were fragile. "I wish," they said, and the words were gentle, not dramatic, "to stop being afraid of stillness, to let quiet be a friend, to let sleep come without a fight." The dock seemed to listen more closely. The lantern flame leaned subtly, as if bowing. Elowen stepped nearer, careful not to crowd the traveler's space. "That is a kind wish," she said. "A brave one. You can place it here if you like, or you can release it onto the water." The traveler looked uncertain. "I don't have a lantern," they whispered. Alowen lifted her basket. "We can make one," she said. From the basket she took a small frame of thin wood, already bound into a simple shape. She'd made these frames in quiet hours, not knowing who might need them. She took out paper as thin as petals and a little candle stub, and she set them on the dock between them. The traveler watched, fascinated, as Elowen worked. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately. She wrapped the paper around the frame, smoothing it as though smoothing worry. She secured it with a touch of paste that smelled faintly like honey. She placed the candle inside, then set the lantern upright. It was plain but beautiful because it was made with care. Elowen looked at the traveler. "Would you like to place the cloth inside?" she asked. The traveler hesitated, then nodded. With reverence, they folded the cloth square, even smaller, and tucked it into the lantern's base, near where the candle would warm it without touching it. Elowen lit the candle from the dock's lantern flame, shielding it with her hand. The traveler's face glowed in the lantern light, and for a moment their eyes looked less tired, as if the warmth had reached a hidden place inside them. Elowen lifted the lantern and held it out. The traveler took it carefully, and their hands trembled just a little, then steadied. Together they stepped into the rowboat. The boat rocked and then settled, as if recognizing another passenger and making room without complaint. Elowen took the oars, and the traveler held the lantern close to their chest, watching the water. They rowed out into the bay, where the lanterns drifted like a gentle gathering of stars. The traveler whispered, "Where do they go?" Elowen rowed with slow, even strokes. "Some go toward the open sea," she said. "Some find their way into the river again, upstream into dreams. Some circle back and return to the shore when the wish is ready to be remembered." The traveler nodded, absorbing these possibilities, without needing to choose one. As they moved farther from the dock, the water around them seemed to grow slightly luminous. Not bright, not glaring, only softly lit, as if moonlight had dissolved into the bay and made it glow from within. The traveler leaned over the side of the boat. and trailed their fingertips through the water. "It feels different," they murmured. Elowen smiled. "It's the wish water," she said quietly. "It holds what people let go of. It holds what people hope for." The traveler's breathing slowed, matching the rhythm of the oars. The lantern in their hands flickered softly, casting a warm oval of light on the surface of the bay. Elowen guided the boat toward a place where the water seemed especially calm, a place that felt like the center of a slow, kind spiral. "This is where quiet wishes like to begin," she said. The traveler looked down at the lantern. "I don't know if I'm doing it right," they confessed, voice small. Elowen's reply was simple. "You are," she said, "because you are here and you are gentle with it." The traveler's shoulders loosened. Their grip on the lantern softened. They lowered the lantern to the water, letting it kiss the surface. The lantern floated immediately, buoyed by the bay, as if the bay had been waiting. For a moment, the traveler kept a fingertip on the lantern's frame, as though reluctant to let go. Then they released it. The lantern drifted away from the boat, its glow steady, its paper sides breathing in and out with the smallest movement of air. The traveler watched it, eyes wide, as if watching something sacred. As the lantern floated, the water around it shimmered, and the lantern's light reflected in a long, trembling path, like a doorway made of gold. The traveler swallowed. "It's going," they whispered. "Yes," Elowen said, "and it's not leaving you behind. It's simply making room in you." The lantern drifted farther, joining the slow constellation of other lanterns. It did not hurry. It did not sink. It simply moved, carried by the invisible kindness of the current. The traveler's breathing grew deeper. Their face softened. It was as though something inside them had unclenched. Elowen did not speak for a while. She let the silence be warm. She let the bay do what it did best: hold and soothe. When the traveler finally spoke, their voice was quieter than before. "I thought the quiet would swallow me," they said. "But it feels like a blanket." Elowen's eyes shone in the dim light. "Quiet can be a blanket," she said. "A place where you don't have to perform, a place where you can simply be." They sat in the boat, drifting now rather than rowing. The oars rested. The bay carried them gently, rocking them with a motion so small it could have been imagined. Above them, the stars looked closer. A thin veil of mist moved across the sky, turning the moon's edges soft. The traveler's eyelids drooped. They blinked slowly, like someone trying to stay awake only out of habit. Elowen watched them with the calm patience of someone who had seen many tired hearts find rest. The traveler's head tipped slightly, then righted itself. "Do you think," they murmured, "that it will work?" Elowen's voice was barely more than a breath. "Wishes do not always work like doors that open at once," she said. "Sometimes they work like seeds, They rest in the dark, they soften, they prepare, and then, one day, without forcing, they begin. The traveler's lips curved into the faintest smile. Seeds, they whispered as if the word itself were comforting. Yes, Elowen said, and the dark is not an enemy to seeds. It's part of the kindness. The boat drifted in the wish water a little longer, rocking gently like a cradle. Then Elowen took up the oars again and began to row back toward the dock.
The traveler did not protest. They looked as if they could have fallen asleep right there, but their eyes followed the dock's lantern light as it approached, warm and steady.
When they reached the dock, Elowen tied the boat. The traveler stepped out slowly, as though the very act of moving might disrupt the calm they had found. The boards creaked softly, welcoming them. Elowen guided the traveler toward a small bench near the comfort keeper's box. The bench was worn smooth, and a folded blanket rested there, waiting. "Sit," Elowen said quietly. And it was not a command, but an invitation. The travelers sat, and Elowen draped the blanket over their shoulders. It smelled faintly of cedar and sun-warmed cloth. The traveler's eyes fluttered. Elowen opened the wooden box and took out the glass orb, the one containing the wish to feel safe in the quiet. She held it up, and its glow lit the traveler's face with a soft, moon-like brightness. "This is not yours," Elowen said gently, "but it understands you. It has been here before." The traveler gazed at it, and something in their expression eased even more. Elowen placed the orb in the traveler's hands. It fit there perfectly, as if made for that space. "Hold it for a moment," Elowen said. "Let it remind you that quiet can be held, and you can be held in it." The traveler nodded slowly, unable to find words, perhaps not needing them. The bay sighed. The lanterns drifted farther out. The dock's lantern flame glowed. Elowen sat beside the traveler, not too close, just near enough to share warmth. She did not speak much. She only breathed slowly, and the traveler's breathing began to match hers, like two waves finding the same rhythm. The traveler's gaze drifted out over the water, but their eyes were half closed now. Their shoulders sank. The muscles of their face let go. Elowen's voice, when it came, was soft and low, like a story told to the night itself. "Long ago," she murmured, "before the town had a name, this dock was only a fallen tree reaching into the bay. Travelers would come here, tired and uncertain, and they would sit on the tree and listen to the water. The water would make room for their thoughts. The night would make room for their fears. And slowly, without anyone insisting, their bodies would remember how to rest." The traveler's eyelids closed for a moment, then opened again, drowsy. Elowen continued, her words flowing like the bay. "They began leaving little offerings," she said, "not to bargain, but to express gratitude. A smooth stone, a shell, a piece of ribbon, something small and gentle, and in return, The bay gave them a place where the world felt softer. The traveler's grip on the orb loosened slightly, their fingers still curved around it, but no longer tight. Alowan watched the lanterns on the water. Each one was a tiny warm promise, moving through darkness, unafraid. She spoke again, even more softly. "The dock learned," she said. "The wood learned, the water learned. They learned that wishes are not heavy when they are carried with tenderness." The traveler's breathing deepened. Their head leaned back against the post behind the bench. Their mouth parted slightly as the body began to let sleep approach, unchallenged. Elowen's voice grew quieter, like wind settling. "Some wishes become answers," she whispered. "Some become paths. Some become nothing more than a moment of comfort. And that is enough." The traveler's eyelids stayed closed now. Their face was smooth, the way a face becomes smooth when it no longer needs to hold itself up. Elowen shifted carefully, taking the glass orb from their hands and placing it back in the wooden box. She covered it with a corner of cloth, as if tucking it in. Then she pulled the blanket higher around the traveler's shoulders. The bay's hush gathered around them like a soft shawl. The night seemed to deepen, not darker, but calmer. Alowan stood and walked to the end of the dock, her steps slow and quiet. She looked out over the bay one last time. The lanterns were farther away now, their lights smaller, like distant homes. She lifted a hand and made a small gesture of farewell, a blessing without words. Then she returned to the bench and sat again, keeping watch in the gentlest way, as though her presence were simply another comfort keeper. Time passed, but it did not matter how much. The air cooled slightly. The dock's lantern continued to glow. The grasses murmured. Alowan's breathing remained slow and steady, and the traveler's breathing remained deep and even. In the quiet, everything felt simpler. The bay did not ask anyone to solve anything tonight. It only asked them to rest. The traveler slept, held by the blanket, held by the dock, held by the steady hush of the water. Their wish was already floating somewhere out there, among the lanterns, learning how to be a seed in the dark. Elowen stayed a while longer, letting the dock be what it was meant to be, a place where quiet wishes could arrive, and where tired hearts could soften. And now, the story itself begins to soften too. The sounds grow farther away. The lantern light becomes warmer, dimmer, more distant, like a candle in another room. Breath by breath, the bay's rhythm becomes your rhythm. Inhale, easy. Exhale, longer. Let the shoulders fall again. Let the hands rest without holding. Let the muscles of the face melt as if warmed by gentle sunlight. The dock of quiet wishes fades into a calm blur of water and lantern glow. Alowan's footsteps are quiet. The traveler sleeps. And you can sleep too. There is nothing you must do. Nothing you must figure out, only this soft, safe quiet, cradling you. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.